Ethan Walker could hardly believe his luck. Or was it bad luck? His tentacles twitched with a mixture of excitement and nerves as his gaze fixed on the holographic assignment board. In bright, pulsating neon green, his name was clearly visible, followed by the ominous Earth Soli 1I Class 12 Death World. "You've got to be kidding," he muttered, his voice a strange blend of a gurgle and a whine. "I specifically requested a relaxing Class 3 Paradise World for my xenobiology field study. How did I end up with this nightmare?" His best friend, Madison Taylor, slithered up beside him, her 4 eyes blinking in rapid succession. "Wow, Ethan," she said with a mischievous tone. "You must have really angered Professor Quillian this time. Did you forget to clean your slime trail again?" Ethan's skin turned a deep purple, a clear sign of embarrassment in Zelthar. "That was one time, Madison. Just one time," he said defensively, his tentacles twisting in frustration. "Besides, I think it was that prank with the gravity inverter in the cafeteria." Madison let out a sound that was half laugh, half gurgle. "Oh yeah, that was priceless." The sight of Professor Quillian floating upside down, his food globules spinning around him like a bizarre little solar system classic. "Yeah, well, I'm not laughing now," Ethan grumbled, still staring at the words Class 12 Death World on the board. "Do you know what they say about Earth? The gravity alone could crush us. And don't even get me started on the air. They call it oxygen, but it might as well be noxygen." Madison rolled all 4 of her eyes simultaneously, a feat that never failed to impress Ethan, though it always made him slightly queasy. "Come on, drama queen, it can't be that bad. Humans live there, don't they?" "Exactly!" Ethan exclaimed, flailing his tentacles in frustration. "Humans! The crazy apes who think extreme sports are a fun weekend activity. They jump out of perfectly good flying machines just for fun, Madison. For fun!" At that moment, a booming voice echoed through the assignment hall. "Attention, students, this is Professor Quillian. I hope you're all thrilled with your assignments," he said, the sarcasm thick enough to slice through. "Remember, this is a critical part of your final grade. Failure is not an option, unless you enjoy repeating this year." Ethan and Madison exchanged an uncomfortable glance. "Well," Madison said, trying to inject some optimism, "at least you won't be alone. Look who else got assigned to Earth." Ethan scanned the board and felt a surge of mixed emotions, relief tinged with dread. Right next to his name were 2 others, Serafina Veldor and Grayson Drax. Serafina was a Saphirix, a gaseous being who usually spent her time enclosed in a containment suit to prevent herself from dissipating. Brilliant but overly enthusiastic, she had once expanded so quickly that she accidentally blew out 3 walls in the dormitory. Grayson, in contrast, was a Therok, solid, dependable, and about as emotionally expressive as a rock. But Ethan figured his strength and stability might come in handy on a planet with such oppressive gravity. "Great," Ethan muttered under his breath. "A team made up of a slime ball, a gas bag, and a pebble. We're definitely going to do great on the planet of the killer apes." Just then, a high-pitched whistle cut through the air. Serafina floated over in her containment suit, gleaming under the hall's lights. "Did I hear my name?" she squealed. "Oh my stars, we're going to Earth! This is so exciting!" Grayson lumbered behind her, each step leaving cracks in the floor. "Earth sounds hard," he rumbled. Ethan stared at his newly assigned team, feeling a headache starting to form. This was going to be a long field study. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. The team endured rigorous physical training to acclimate to Earth's gravity, studied human customs, thankfully the vast majority of which involved not eating each other, and got fitted for their environmental suits. "I don't get it," Ethan complained, his frustration growing as the suit engineer, a spindly creature named Lyle Norin, adjusted his oxygen filter. "If humans can breathe the air, why do we need these suits?" Lyle gave him a look that suggested he was dealing with a particularly dense asteroid. "Because, young Grylosh, what's breathable for humans is toxic for you. Unless you want your insides to become your outsides in a rather spectacular and messy fashion, you'll wear the suit." Serafina chimed in cheerfully. "But it's kind of cool. Hey, if that happens to Ethan, can I study it for my biochemistry project?" "No," Professor Quillian interjected, oozing into the room. "No one is dissolving anyone else, at least not until after you've submitted your field reports." He paused, his gelatinous form rippling with what might have been amusement. I'm joking, of course. The Galactic Ethics Board frowns upon student dissolution these days. What a shame. The professor's attempt at humor did little to calm Ethan's nerves. As the departure day loomed closer, he found himself obsessively reviewing every detail about Earth. The more he learned, the more his anxiety grew. "Did you know," he announced to the team during one of their preparation meetings, "that Earth has these things called mosquitoes? Tiny flying creatures that suck your blood?" Serafina gasped, her gaseous form swirling excitedly in her suit. "Ooh, fascinating. I wonder if they'd try to suck my gases." Grayson, as usual, had little to say. "Bugs. Crush bugs," he grunted. "That's not even the worst of it," Ethan continued, his tentacles twisting into knots. "They have these huge creatures called bears. Apparently they can smell fear, and guess what? I'm terrified." "Oh, please," came a new voice. The team turned to see Violet Saris, the top student in their year. Her bioluminescent skin pulsed with smug superiority. "You're all making such a fuss over nothing. Earth is just another planet." "I'm sure Earth is no match for your superior intellect," Ethan muttered, feeling a mix of annoyance and jealousy. Of course, Violet had probably been assigned to some cushy Class 2 world, one filled with peaceful, philosophical beings who spent their days pondering the meaning of life over cups of perfectly temperature-controlled, non-toxic beverages. "Easy for you to say," Ethan shot back. "Your biggest concern is probably getting a sunburn from all those bioluminescent beings." Violet's skin flashed a pattern that, in Luminarium, roughly translated to whatever loser. "Well, good luck on your little camping trip," she added sarcastically, gliding away. "Try not to get eaten by a bear." With that, she left behind a trail of softly glowing particles in her wake. "I hope she gets a paper cut from all the poetry they'll probably give her," Ethan grumbled. "Statistically improbable," Grayson grumbled. "Luminari don't use paper, or hands." "Thanks, Grayson. You always know just what to say to cheer me up," Ethan sighed. Finally, the day of departure arrived. The team stood before the quantum translocation pad, their environmental suits gleaming under the launch bay lights. Professor Quillian oozed forward, his gelatinous form somehow managing to look both bored and mildly amused. "Well, students," he gurgled, "you're about to embark on a journey that will either make or break your academic careers, possibly literally in the case of Earth." He paused, his surface rippling with what might have been a chuckle. "Remember your training. Stick together and try not to cause an interstellar incident. The paperwork is a real pain in the pseudopod." Ethan glanced at his teammates. Serafina was practically vibrating with excitement, her gaseous form swirling so fast in her containment suit that it looked like a tiny galaxy. Grayson stood stoically as usual, though Ethan swore he saw tiny pebbles of sweat forming on his rocky brow. "Any last words of wisdom, Professor?" Ethan asked, hoping for some reassurance. Professor Quillian's entire form rippled, his equivalent of a shrug. "Don't die. It looks bad on my performance review." With that heartwarming send-off, the team stepped onto the quantum translocation pad. Ethan felt the familiar tingle of his atoms being disassembled, and his last coherent thought before being hurled across the galaxy was, "I should have studied accounting instead." In a flash of light and the faint smell of ozone, the team materialized on Earth. They found themselves in a dense forest, towering trees stretching up toward an alien sky. "Wow," Serafina whispered, her voice filled with awe. "Look at all this green." Ethan couldn't help but admit it was impressive and terrifying. Every rustle of leaves made his tentacles twitch in unease. "Okay, team, remember the mission," he said, trying to steady his nerves. "We're here to observe and document Earth's biodiversity. Let's start with something simple, like, I don't know, a blade of grass." Grayson lumbered over to a nearby patch of grass and stared at it intently. After a moment of silence, he announced, "Grass, green, pointy." "Brilliant observation, Grayson," Ethan sighed. "I can see why they call you the poet of our generation." Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the forest. The team huddled together, their environmental suits clanking against each other. "What was that?" Serafina stuttered, her gaseous form swirling anxiously. "Maybe it's one of those bear creatures," Ethan whispered, his voice a mix of terror and excitement. Quick, Grayson, get ready to crush it. Grayson raised his rocky arms, ready to defend his team, but instead of a terrifying earth monster, a small furry creature hopped into view. It had long ears, a twitching nose, and was munching on something green. "Oh," Ethan said, feeling a mix of relief and disappointment. "It's just a... What did the briefing call these? A bunny?" Serafina squealed with delight. "It's so cute! Look at its fluffy little tail." Even Grayson seemed charmed. "Small rock? Soft rock? Nice rock," he rumbled. Ethan felt himself relax. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. He took a step toward the bunny, his datapad ready to record observations. "Okay, let's see. Subject appears to be a small mammal, approximately 30 centimeters in length." He never got to finish his scientific description. In a blur of motion, a much larger creature burst from the underbrush. Sleek, with reddish fur and a bushy tail, it snatched up the bunny in powerful jaws before disappearing back into the forest. The team stood frozen in shocked silence. Did you see that?" Ethan finally sputtered. "It just ate the little fluffy thing. Just like that." Serafina's containment suit turned a pale, sickly color. "I think I'm going to be sick. Can gaseous beings get sick? Because I'm pretty sure I am." Even Grayson seemed shaken. "Nature, red in tooth and claw. Scary," he rumbled. Ethan's tentacles twisted into knots once more. Okay, let's not panic. This is just nature, right? It's all part of the circle of life. Or something. We're scientists. We can handle this." Just then, their comm units crackled to life. Professor Quillian's voice came through, sounding even more bored than usual. "Check-in time, students. How's Earth treating you? Managed not to get eaten yet?" Ethan took a deep breath before responding. "Professor, we've just witnessed a violent act of predation. A small, defenseless creature was devoured by a larger, more aggressive one." There was a pause. Then Professor Quillian's voice returned, dripping with sarcasm. "Congratulations. You've discovered the food chain. I'll alert the galactic scientific community immediately." "But, Professor," Serafina chimed in, her voice still shaky, "it was so sudden and violent. How can creatures live like this, constantly in fear of being eaten?" "Welcome to Earth, students," Professor Quillian replied, his voice oozing with mockery. "It's where everything's trying to kill everything else, and the humans sit at the top, eating popcorn and making nature documentaries about it. If you're done having an existential crisis over basic ecology, maybe you could focus on your actual research now." The comm unit clicked off, leaving the team to reflect on their situation. "All right," Ethan said, attempting to sound more assured than he felt. "We're scientists. We can handle this. Let's find a safe, open area and set up camp." As they moved deeper into the forest, every rustle of leaves and snap of a twig caused them to flinch. Even Grayson, who was usually unwavering, seemed to be moving faster than usual. Finally, they discovered a suitable clearing and began setting up their equipment. Ethan was busy calibrating the atmospheric analyzer when he heard Serafina gasp. "Guys," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of terror and curiosity. "Don't move. Look up, slowly." Ethan hesitated, then slowly raised his eyes, feeling his heart's, yes, all three, stop. There, perched on a branch above them, was a creature straight out of a nightmare. It had 8 legs, multiple eyes, and a thick layer of hair covering its body, and it was about the size of Ethan's head. "What is that?" Ethan barely managed to squeak out. Grayson, as helpful as ever, rumbled, "Spider, big spider." "That's not a spider," Ethan hissed. "That's a monster." "Spiders are supposed to be tiny," Serafina interrupted, her curiosity overpowering her fear. "Earth is home to a vast array of arachnids, some of which can grow quite large. This appears to be a species of huntsman spider. They're known for their size and speed." "Speed?" Ethan whimpered. "Did you say speed?" As if on cue, the spider suddenly dropped from its branch, landing on the forest floor with an unsettling swiftness. The team let out a collective shriek. Well, Grayson's was more of a low rumble, and scrambled backward in panic. In their haste, they didn't notice the slight incline behind them. Ethan's foot slipped, and in the blink of an eye, they were tumbling down the hill in a chaotic tumble of tentacles, gas, and rocks. They finally came to a halt at the bottom, groaning as they checked their environmental suits for damage. "Is everyone okay?" Ethan asked, his tentacles still quivering. "I think so," Serafina replied, her gaseous form swirling in her suit as she wobbled. "Though I feel like I've been through a nebula and back." Grayson simply grunted, which Ethan took as a yes. As they got their bearings, Ethan realized they had rolled into a different area. The trees here were taller, more spaced out, and there was a constant rushing sound in the air. "Where are we?" Serafina asked, her curiosity piqued. Ethan checked his datapad, which had somehow survived the tumble. "Looks like we're near something called a river. It's a large, moving body of water." The team pushed through some bushes and emerged at the edge of a wide, fast-moving river. The water raced over rocks, churning and swirling in powerful eddies. "Wow," Serafina breathed in awe. "This is beautiful." Even Ethan had to admit it was an impressive sight. He was just about to suggest taking samples when something odd caught his eye. "Hey," he said, pointing with a tentacle. "What's that?" The team leaned in, peering at the water. Beneath the surface, a massive shape moved against the current. "Is that a fish?" Serafina asked, pressing her containment suit against the bank for a closer look. "If it is," Ethan replied, his curiosity briefly overpowering his fear, "it's the biggest fish I've ever seen." Without warning, the water exploded upwards. A sleek, powerful form shot from the river, its scales shimmering in the sunlight. In its mouth was a smaller fish, struggling in vain. The team watched in stunned silence as the larger fish twisted in midair, then crashed back into the water with a splash that drenched them all. "That," Grayson rumbled after a beat, "was big fish." "No kidding," Ethan said, a mix of awe and fear in his voice. "I think we just witnessed what was it called again? A salmon run?" Serafina's gaseous form swirled excitedly in her suit. "This is incredible. Salmon swim upstream to spawn, overcoming massive obstacles and dangerous predators. It's a fascinating example of Earth's biodiversity and the struggle for survival." "Yeah, fascinating," Ethan muttered, wringing the water from his tentacles. "Can we please find somewhere less murderous to study?" As if on cue, a new sound reached them, a rhythmic thudding, accompanied by a strange melodic hum. "What's that?" Serafina asked, her form stretching toward the sound. Ethan checked his datapad again. "Looks like we're near a human settlement. I think that sound it might be human music." The team exchanged uneasy glances. They had been so focused on the wildlife that they had almost forgotten about Earth's dominant species. "Should we check it out?" Serafina asked cautiously. Ethan weighed their options. On one hand, they were supposed to study Earth's biodiversity, not its sentient inhabitants. On the other hand, they were cold, wet, and had just witnessed 2 instances of violent predation. The idea of observing some supposedly civilized beings was tempting. "All right," he decided, "but we stay hidden. No contact, remember?" They made their way toward the source of the sound, carefully making their way through the underbrush. As they got closer, they could see more details. A clearing ahead revealed strange structures. Humans were moving about, engaged in various activities. The team crouched behind a large bush, peering cautiously at the scene. "What are they doing?" Serafina whispered, her curiosity piqued. Ethan squinted, trying to make sense of the activity. I think they're having some kind of celebration. Look, they're cooking food over open flames." "Isn't that dangerous?" Serafina asked. "Playing with fire like that?" "Everything on this planet seems dangerous," Ethan replied. "I guess humans just decided to make friends with danger." They watched as the humans laughed, ate, and moved about their celebration. The rhythmic sounds in the distance were so distinct from the violent scenes they'd experienced in the forest that it was hard to believe they were on the same planet. "Humans," Grayson muttered thoughtfully. "Confusing." "You said it," Ethan replied, still trying to wrap his head around everything. Just then, a small human child broke away from the group, running toward their hiding spot with a stick in hand. The team froze, barely daring to move as the child approached. The little human was lost in its game, swinging the stick around and making whooshing sounds, completely unaware of the strange beings hiding just a few feet away. Ethan's heart raced, and for a moment he couldn't help but panic. They weren't supposed to make contact. If they were discovered, an interstellar incident could be triggered, and Professor Quillian would definitely turn him into nutrient paste. But the child was getting closer, inching ever nearer to their hiding spot. Any second now, it would see them. Ethan's mind spun with thoughts of what to do. Should they run, try to communicate, play dead? Did humans even understand the concept of playing dead? Just as the child was about to push the branch aside, a voice rang out from the clearing. "Jimmy! Time for hot dogs!" Without a second thought, the child turned and ran back toward the gathering, stick forgotten. Ethan let out a deep breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "That was way too close," Serafina whispered, her gaseous form swirling in anxiety. "Too close," Ethan agreed. "We need to get out of here." But before he could finish, a deafening roar pierced the air from above. The team looked up, stunned, as a massive metal object streaked across the sky, leaving a white trail behind it. "What is that?" Serafina gasped, her containment suit vibrating with fear. Ethan hurriedly scanned his datapad. "That's an airplane. Humans use them for transportation. They fly through the air in metal tubes powered by explosions." There was a stunned silence as the team processed the information. "Let me get this straight," Serafina said, her voice full of disbelief. Humans looked at the sky, full of dangerous birds and unpredictable weather, and thought, "Hey, what if we could fly up there in a metal box powered by constant explosions?" "Pretty much," Ethan replied, still staring in shock at the sky. "Humans," Grayson rumbled, shaking his rocky head. "Crazy." As more airplanes soared through the sky in seemingly random patterns, the humans below in the clearing barely seemed to notice, continuing their celebration as though hurtling through the air in explosion-powered metal tubes was the most natural thing in the world. "I think," Ethan said slowly, "I'm starting to understand why Earth is classified as a death world." "Because everything's trying to kill everything else?" Serafina asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. "No," Ethan replied, a smile creeping onto his face. "Because humans looked at a planet where everything is trying to kill everything else and decided to make it even more dangerous for fun." Just then, a loud bang echoed from the clearing. The team jumped in surprise, only to watch colorful lights explode in the sky above the humans. "Are they under attack?" Serafina gasped. Ethan quickly checked his datapad. "No, apparently those are called fireworks. Humans create explosions in the sky for entertainment." For a long moment, the team stood there, silently watching as the humans cheered each time the sky lit up with more explosions. Their faces glowed with the colorful bursts above. "You know," Serafina said thoughtfully, "it's kind of beautiful in a weird way." Ethan had to admit, there was something mesmerizing about the lights. They painted the night sky with fleeting blooms of color, and despite living on a planet seemingly designed to kill them, the humans seemed so joyful. They had found ways to not just survive, but to create beauty. "Maybe," Ethan said slowly, "we've been looking at this all wrong. Maybe Earth isn't a death world because it's so dangerous. Maybe it's a death world because it had to be to produce a species like humans." "Deep thoughts," Grayson rumbled approvingly as they continued to watch the celebration unfold. A new feeling began to replace Ethan's fear. Admiration. It was something he hadn't expected to feel on this terrifying planet. "All right," Ethan said, standing carefully to avoid being seen. "We've got a lot more to learn about this place, and I have a feeling it's going to be a lot more interesting than we first thought." As they quietly slipped away from the human settlement, Ethan found himself excited about what lay ahead. Earth was dangerous, yes, but it was also beautiful, complex, and full of surprises, just like the humans who called it home. Their journey was far from over, but Ethan had a strong sense that it was going to be the adventure of a lifetime. And who knows? Maybe by the end of it, they'd understand why humans looked at a universe full of paradise worlds and deadly planets and decided that the dangerous one was the best place to call home. As they ventured back into the forest, the sky behind them continued to explode in bursts of color, a reminder that on Earth, even celebration came with a hint of danger. Somehow, that made it all the more thrilling. The next few days were a whirlwind of discovery and near-death experiences, often happening at the same time. The team trekked across various Earth biomes, from dense forests to wide-open plains, each offering its own mix of wonders and terrors. They observed a pack of wolves taking down a deer, amazed at their coordination and the efficiency of the hunt, yet disturbed by its raw brutality. Serafina nearly got sucked into a quicksand pit, only saved by Grayson's swift thinking and rock-solid strength. Ethan had a close encounter with a swarm of bees. The hard way, Ethan discovered, that not all of Earth's dangers came in the form of large, toothy creatures. But for every terrifying moment, there were twice as many moments of sheer beauty. They watched in awe as a murmuration of starlings danced across the sky, weaving fluid patterns that seemed to defy the laws of physics. They sat in hushed silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a breathtaking array of gold and crimson hues across a vast canyon. They even managed to observe a human campsite from a safe distance, bemused by how the humans deliberately sought discomfort, sleeping on the cold ground and cooking over open flames, despite having perfectly good shelters and food synthesizers back in their cities. It was during one of these observations that they overheard something that would change the entire course of their mission. They were hidden in the bushes near a human campsite, watching as a group of young humans sat around an older one, listening to stories by a crackling campfire. The flames cast long, flickering shadows, giving the scene an eerie atmosphere. "And that's why," the older human explained, "we always carry bear spray when we go hiking in these parts." The younger humans nodded solemnly, clutching their sleeping bags a little tighter. "Bear spray?" Serafina whispered, intrigued. "Is that some kind of scent to ward off predators?" Ethan checked his datapad. "No. Apparently it's a weapon, a chemical irritant. Humans make weapons to defend themselves from bears." Grayson rumbled thoughtfully. "Humans make weapons for everything." "Exactly," Ethan replied, "including, historically, other humans." Their conversation was interrupted by one of the young humans speaking up. "But Mr. Clark, what about the monster that lives in Crystal Lake? My brother says it comes out at night and eats campers." The older human, Mr. Clark Davidson, chuckled. "Now, Tommy, you know there's no monster in Crystal Lake. That's just an old campfire story." But Ethan wasn't paying attention to the adult anymore. His mind was racing. "Guys," he whispered eagerly, "did you hear that? A monster that eats campers? This could be the discovery of the century." Serafina's gaseous form swirled skeptically in her suit, but the human adults said it wasn't real. "Of course they'd say that," Ethan argued. "Adults always tell young ones not to believe in monsters, but on a planet like this, I bet there are plenty of things humans would call monsters." "Dangerous," Grayson warned. "Everything here is dangerous." Ethan shook his head. "But think about it. If we could document an undiscovered species, especially one that preys on the dominant life form, we'd be famous. We might even get to name it." Serafina and Grayson exchanged glances, Serafina's gaseous form swirling toward Grayson's rocky face. "I don't know," Serafina said hesitantly. "It sounds risky." "Riskier than everything we've already done here?" Ethan asked, eager. "Come on," he said, trying to rally them. "Where's your sense of scientific discovery?" After some more debate, the team reluctantly agreed to investigate Crystal Lake. They followed the directions they'd overheard, and as they approached the lake, the forest seemed to grow denser, the shadows deeper. A strange, eerie mist hung in the air, draping the scene with a supernatural quality. "Okay," Ethan said, his voice low. "Let's split up and search the shoreline, but be careful. Call for help if you see anything suspicious." They separated, each taking a different section of the lake. Ethan moved cautiously along the misty shore, his tentacles twitching at every sound. The datapad in his upper appendage beeped softly, scanning for any unusual life signs. "This is ridiculous," Ethan muttered to himself. "We're trained xenobiologists. Well, trained xenobiology students. We shouldn't be chasing campfire stories like this." His self-reassurance was abruptly cut off by a loud splash from the lake. Ethan froze, his 3 hearts pounding in rapid succession. "Hello?" he called out, immediately regretting it. If there was a monster, he'd just made himself its dinner bell. Another splash, closer this time. Ethan's tentacles curled with fear as he saw a dark shape moving beneath the water's surface, heading straight toward the shore, and straight toward him. "Guys!" Ethan squeaked into his comm unit. "I think I found something, or something found me! Help!" The shape grew larger, the water bulging upwards as it neared. Ethan stumbled backward, tripping over a rock and landing unceremoniously on his back. He watched in dread as the form continued to emerge from the lake. First a head, then broad shoulders, then a bright orange life vest. "Woohoo!" shouted the creature as it fully emerged from the water. "Did you see that fish? It was this big!" Ethan blinked in confusion. The monster was just a human wearing a protective flotation device and holding a long stick with a string attached to it. "I thought you said this lake was fished out," Jerry, the human, called back toward a small boat Ethan hadn't noticed before. "Ethan?" Serafina's voice crackled through the comm unit. "Are you okay? We heard you call for help." Ethan, still staring at the cheerful human who was now excitedly talking about the size of the fish, replied weakly, "False alarm, guys. Unless the monster disguises itself as a loud, excitable human with a passion for aquatic creature torture." Grayson soon joined him, and the team watched from the safety of the bushes as more humans arrived, all engaged in this strange ritual they called fishing. "I don't get it," Serafina whispered. "They're intentionally tricking animals into eating sharp metal, then yanking them out of their natural habitat. How is this fun?" "Humans," Grayson rumbled sagely. "Strange fun." Ethan sighed, his earlier excitement deflated. "Well, I guess that's it for the monster hunt. Should we head back to camp?" But just as they were about to leave, a blood-curdling scream echoed across the lake. The team turned in alarm to see one of the humans pointing frantically at the water. "There! There!" the human shouted. "I saw it! The Crystal Lake monster!" The other humans laughed and shook their heads, but Ethan felt a surge of excitement rush through him. "Come on!" he whispered urgently to his team. "Let's check it out." They crept closer to the water's edge, taking care to stay hidden. The human continued to insist he had seen something, describing glowing red eyes and tentacles as thick as tree trunks. Ethan's own tentacles trembled with anticipation. Could it be true? Had they really found an actual cryptid? Then, suddenly, the water began to bubble and churn. The team huddled together, a mix of dread and exhilaration sweeping over them. This was it. This was the moment, the discovery that could define their careers. From the roiling water, a log rose to the surface. A very large, moss-covered log, but a log nonetheless. As it bobbed up, the team could see red reflectors nailed to one end, glowing eyes, trailing roots, and branches that looked like tentacles. The humans erupted into laughter. "Looks like old Joe's been hitting the moonshine again," one of them called out, pointing at the monster log. "Seeing monster logs now." As the humans laughed and joked, the alien team sat in disappointed silence. "Well," Serafina said with a sigh, "I guess Earth doesn't need monsters. It's got humans." Ethan nodded, a bit defeated. "Yeah. Imagine a species that not only survives on a death world, but gets bored enough to make up fake monsters to scare themselves." "Humans," Grayson rumbled. "Scariest monsters." As they made their way back to camp, Ethan couldn't help but feel a combination of disappointment and admiration. They hadn't found a new species, but they had uncovered something equally revealing about Earth and its dominant species. Humans didn't just live with the dangers their world offered. They needed to invent new ones, to challenge themselves, to add excitement to their lives. It was baffling, terrifying, and strangely inspiring all at once. Back at camp, with the moon rising over the trees and casting an eerie glow over the landscape, the team settled in to go over their notes from the day. "You know," Ethan said, glancing up from his datapad, "I think I finally get why Earth is classified as a death world." Serafina's gaseous form pulsed with curiosity. "Because of the dangerous wildlife? The extreme weather? The toxic air for most species?" "No," Ethan replied, shaking his head. "It's a death world because it had to be, because nothing less could have produced a species like humans. Grayson tilted his rocky head, confused. Explain. Ethan gestured expansively with his tentacles. Think about it. We've seen humans survive in environments that would kill most species. We've seen them turn life-threatening situations into games. We've watched them intentionally seek out danger for fun. They're not just surviving on this death world. They're thriving on it. So, you're saying, Serafina ventured, that humans are the way they are because of Earth, and Earth is the way it is because of humans? It's a sort of symbiotic relationship? Exactly, Ethan said, his eyes wide with excitement. Earth and humans have shaped each other. The planet's dangers forced humans to become adaptable, resilient, and innovative. And in return, humans have taken Earth's inherent dangers and turned them into opportunities for growth. Grayson nodded slowly, pebbles shifting in deep thought. Humans and Earth perfectly matched. As if to underline Grayson's point, a distant howl echoed through the forest. Instead of feeling fear, Ethan felt a surge of respect. That howl, which would send most species running in terror, would likely attract humans armed with nothing but curiosity and their strange light-emitting devices they called flashlights. I think, Ethan said slowly, we've been looking at this all wrong. We came here expecting to study a hostile world and the creatures that somehow survive it. But Earth isn't a death world. Serafina's form pulsed questioningly. What is it then? It's a challenge, Ethan replied, a tone of awe in his voice. Earth isn't just a planet, it's a gauntlet, a test, and humans are the ones who pass that test every day. The team fell into thoughtful silence, the sounds of the forest around them the only noise. As they sat there, surrounded by a world that had once terrified them, Ethan realized something had changed. The snaps of twigs and rustles of leaves no longer filled him with fear. Instead, he felt a growing curiosity, an itch to explore and understand. He realized with a start, starting to think like a human. But tomorrow, he announced, his tone firm, we're going to really start studying this place. No more hiding, no more fear. We're going to observe Earth and its humans the way they deserve to be observed, up close and personal. Serafina's gaseous form swirled excitedly. You mean? That's right, Ethan confirmed, his tentacles curling in determination. We're going to camp like humans. Grayson rumbled in agreement. Live like humans. Understand humans. As they began to plan their expedition into human-style camping, complete with flimsy shelter constructs, tents, and the ritualistic burning of sugary treats called marshmallows, Ethan felt an electrifying thrill. They had come to Earth expecting to study a death world. Instead, they were learning about life in its most vibrant, audacious form. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and absolutely fascinating all at once. The next morning, armed with renewed determination and a collection of human camping gear they had replicated using their advanced technology, the team set out to find the perfect campsite. They chose a clearing near a babbling brook, surrounded by towering trees that seemed to reach for the sky. Okay, team, Ethan said, his tentacles buzzing with excitement. Let's set up camp like the humans do. What followed was a comedy of errors that would have had any human camper in stitches. Serafina, in her enthusiasm, inflated the tent so much that it nearly floated away. Grayson, trying to be helpful, hammered. The tent pegs were driven so deep into the ground that they completely vanished. And Ethan, in his attempt to ignite a campfire, managed to cause a small plasma explosion that singed his eyebrows, or what could be considered eyebrows for a Grylosh. I don't get it, Ethan grumbled, staring at the smoking remnants of their failed attempts. How do humans enjoy this? We have advanced degrees in xenobiology, and we can't even set up a simple shelter. Serafina, her gaseous form swirling with amusement, replied, Maybe that's the point, Ethan. It's not about perfection. It's about the experience, the challenge. Grayson, who had been quietly observing the chaos, suddenly rumbled, Humans coming. The team froze, unsure whether to hide or stay put. Before they could decide, a group of human hikers emerged from the tree line. They stopped dead in their tracks, their eyes widening as they took in the sight. 3 bizarre alien creatures standing amidst the wreckage of a failed campsite. For a few seconds, no one moved. Ethan's heart raced as he realized they had just broken one of their mission's primary rules. No contact with the local sentient species. But then, to their surprise, one of the humans stepped forward with a friendly smile. "Hey there, folks," the human called out cheerfully. "Looks like you could use a hand with that tent." Ethan exchanged bewildered glances with his teammates. This was not at all the reaction they had expected. Where was the screaming, the panic, the frantic calls to authorities about an alien invasion? But the human, oblivious to their inner chaos, continued happily. "First time camping, huh? Don't worry, we've all been there. Mind if we help out?" Before the alien team could react, the humans had already sprung into action. They straightened the tent, repositioned the campfire, and even shared advice on the best way to roast marshmallows. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the clearing was transformed. A proper campsite had emerged, complete with a crackling fire and the delicious aroma of food roasting over it. The humans, instead of fleeing in terror, had invited themselves to stay, clearly delighted by the chance to help out some newbie campers. Ethan, Serafina, and Grayson found themselves seated around the fire, engaging in relaxed conversation with the humans, who seemed to accept their alien appearance without any fuss. "So, where are you folks from?" one of the humans asked, while roasting a marshmallow. "Those are some pretty impressive costumes." Still stunned by the unexpected turn of events, Ethan managed to stammer, "We're, exchange students. From very far away." The human nodded sagely. "Ah, that explains it. You picked a great place for your first camping trip, though. Earth's got some of the most beautiful spots like this." As the night went on, the alien team found themselves relaxing, drawn into the warmth of the fire and the camaraderie of the humans. The humans shared stories, taught them songs, and explained how to make s'mores. Later, as the humans retired to their tents and the alien team huddled in their own shelter, Ethan whispered, "I can't believe what just happened. They didn't even question us." Serafina's gaseous form swirled thoughtfully. "Maybe they thought we were in costumes, or maybe they're just that accepting." Grayson rumbled softly, "Humans." Ethan lay there listening to the peaceful sounds of the forest around them and the gentle snoring of their new human friends. He felt a shift in his understanding. Earth was undeniably a death world, filled with dangers and challenges. But the humans, these extraordinary beings, had created something beautiful in the midst of it all. They had taken the harshness of their world and transformed it into an adventure. They had looked at the unknown, the unfamiliar, and the potentially dangerous and responded with curiosity and kindness. In that moment, Ethan understood that the true wonder of Earth wasn't its perilous environments or its ferocious wildlife. It was the humans themselves, a species that could face countless dangers with a smile, a helping hand, and a perfectly roasted marshmallow. As he drifted off to sleep, Ethan felt an excitement growing inside him, one he never expected to experience on this death world. There was so much more to discover, so much more to see, and who knew? Maybe by the end of it, they wouldn't just understand humans better. Maybe they'd become a little more human themselves. After all, on a death world like Earth, a little humanity might just be the ultimate survival trait.